The morning sun slanted through the kitchen window of apartment 17B, streaking warm light across the countertops and the half-eaten bowl of cereal in front of 5-year-old Ellie Barnes. She sat cross-legged on her chair, spoon hovering in mid-air, staring out across the skyline of downtown Houston. "Mummy," she said, her voice soft but steady. "There's a dog out there. He's hanging." Lauren Barnes looked up from her coffee, exhaustion heavy in her limbs after a 12-hour ER shift. Her scrubs still carried the faint scent of antiseptic and adrenaline. She blinked twice, thinking maybe she'd misheard. "A dog is what, sweetheart?" Ellie pointed out the window with the spoon, her tiny brows knit in concern. "He's hanging off that building. He's scared." At the table across from them, David Barnes flipped the page of the newspaper without looking up. "You mean like, on a leash?" he asked, humoring her. "No," Ellie said. "He's hanging by one paw, from the window washing thingy." David glanced at Lauren, offering a half smile. This wasn't the first time Ellie had seen something that no one else could. A few weeks ago, she'd insisted there was a baby bird trapped on their balcony. And there was. Before that, she'd told them something was wrong in apartment 14C. Turned out the elderly woman who lived there had fallen and hadn't been found until hours later. Still, a dog hanging from a skyscraper? "Sweetie," Lauren said gently, walking over to Ellie's side. "You're probably just seeing something reflected in the glass. Maybe a shadow?" Ellie shook her head, her cereal completely forgotten. "No, Mum. He's real. And he's scared. I can feel it." David sighed and stood up, brushing toast crumbs from his jeans. "I'll check it out," he muttered. "Let's not ignore the kid in case there's actually something." He walked over to the window and squinted across the skyline. Their apartment building faced Horizon Plaza, a 40-story glass tower just across the street. The reflective windows shimmered in the sunlight, nearly impossible to stare at directly without help. He narrowed his eyes, trying to make sense of what Ellie had seen. "I don't see anything," he said after a moment. Lauren joined him. "Get the binoculars, the ones we use for bird watching in the fall." David retrieved them from the hallway closet, shaking his head as he returned. "If she's right again, we're going to owe her a pony." He adjusted the focus and raised the binoculars to his eyes. The moment he saw it, he went stiff. "Lauren," he said quietly, not lowering the lenses. "Come look at this. Right now." Lauren took the binoculars from his hands and peered across the divide. There, dangling from a twisted, barely stable window-washing rig on the 30th floor, was a large German shepherd. The dog's right paw clung desperately to the edge of the platform. Its body hung awkwardly, hind legs, flailing in midair. The rig had broken free on one side and now tilted downward at a dangerous angle. "Oh my God!" she whispered. "I told you," Ellie said from behind them. "He's hurt, and he's calling." Lauren looked at her daughter. "Calling how, Ellie?" Ellie shrugged, her eyes still fixed out the window. "Not with words, with feelings. He's really scared, but not just for himself." Lauren felt a chill crawl up her spine. Within minutes, they were out the door, rushing down the elevator and into the humid Houston morning. The streets were already thick with honking traffic and the distant wail of sirens, though none yet heading toward Horizon Plaza. David dialed 911 while Lauren clutched Ellie's hand tightly, her heart pounding for reasons she couldn't yet explain. By the time they reached the base of Horizon Plaza, a small crowd had gathered. Most people were staring upward, shielding their eyes from the sun, confusion etched into their faces. Some had begun filming with their phones. "That's my dog," a trembling voice called out. An elderly man sat slumped in a wheelchair near the building's entrance, his hospital gown peeking out beneath a tattered cardigan. An orderly hovered nearby, clearly nervous. The man's eyes were locked on the tiny silhouette dangling high above. "He's mine," the man said again. "That's Ranger. He must have followed me when they took me to the hospital." Lauren stepped forward. "Sir, are you okay? You shouldn't be out here." "I had to come," the man rasped. "He's all I have left." The woman standing beside him, a nurse by the look of it, leaned in. "This is Mr. Raymond. He was brought into Memorial General yesterday. Cardiac episode. No one realized his dog was missing until now." David knelt beside Ellie. "How did you know, kiddo? That building's over 500 feet away." Ellie looked up at him, unblinking. "I heard him. In my heart." A gust of wind rattled the high-rise windows. Above them, the suspended platform shifted again, groaning under the weight of the dangling dog. Ranger's legs flailed, trying to hook on to something, anything that would help him regain balance. "He's slipping!" someone shouted. A siren screamed to a stop behind them. A fire truck. Then another. Police cars. A Channel 8 news van. Out of the fire truck stepped Captain Maya Dawson, a commanding presence in her 50s with short-cropped silver hair and a calm that radiated confidence. She assessed the situation through a high-powered scope. "The rig's partially detached. Only one support line left. We can't send a person up. It won't hold the weight." A young officer, Ben Romero, maybe mid-20s, clenched his jaw. "So we just wait? Let the dog fall?" "I'm not saying that," Captain Dawson replied. "But until we know more, it's too risky to go up." "I know it sounds crazy," David cut in, stepping forward. "But our daughter spotted him from our apartment. She says he's asking for help. Says he's not just scared, he's trying to help someone." Captain Dawson looked at the small girl standing between her parents. Ellie's eyes didn't blink. They were locked on the faraway shape of the dog. "He says his name isn't Ranger," she said calmly. "It's Hunter. Mr. Raymond just forgot. Because he's sick." Everyone turned to the old man. His mouth trembled. "My wife. She used to call him that. Before she passed." No one spoke for a moment. Captain Dawson lowered her scope. "I don't know how she knows that," she said, "but I've learned not to ignore gut feelings in this job." The rig creaked again. A piece of metal clattered down from above, landing several feet away from the crowd. "He's slipping more," Ellie said. Lauren looked at her daughter. "Ellie, what else do you feel?" Ellie took a step closer to the building, tilting her head as if listening to some frequency no one else could hear. "He's not just scared for himself. He thinks Mr. Raymond is in trouble. He says he left something important behind, something the doctors don't know." Mr. Raymond gasped suddenly, reaching for his chest. "My pills," he murmured. "My heart meds. They're still at home. Oh God!" The nurse attending to him called for paramedics as he started to slump in the wheelchair. Ellie stood motionless, as if absorbing everything around her. Fire trucks, shouts, sirens, the shimmer of the distant glass tower. "He was trying to get someone's attention," she whispered. "Hunter wasn't trying to run away. He was trying to help." And that's when it happened. With a sound like a gunshot, one of the remaining cables supporting the rig snapped. The crowd screamed. The rig tilted violently. Hunter lost his balance, scrabbling with both paws now, barely clinging to the edge. David instinctively moved in front of Ellie. Lauren covered her mouth in horror. "And Ellie?" she whispered. "He's waiting for someone who can help, and he thinks it's me." Her voice didn't waver. In the chaos of the street, in the clamor of radios and shouts, and the distant buzz of news cameras going live, no one noticed the smallest person in the crowd take one quiet, deliberate step toward the building's revolving doors. But someone did notice. Hunter, 30 stories above, Dangling by sheer will and the strength of one battered paw, the dog turned his head, not toward the crowd, but toward the window where Ellie had been watching just moments before. And for a split second, it looked like he knew she was coming. By the time Lauren, David, and Ellie reached the base of Horizon Plaza, a thick crowd had already gathered behind the yellow sawhorse barricades hastily erected by first responders. Strangers stood shoulder to shoulder, heads craned back, some with phones pointed skyward, others simply frozen in disbelief. Above them, 30 stories high, the German shepherd clung to the tilted platform like a lifeline. His chest heaved, front paws splayed wide against the unstable metal frame. The wind whipped at his coat, pulling his ears back. One paw was beginning to slip. Firefighters were setting up an incident perimeter, police were redirecting traffic, and a Channel 4 news van had just pulled up to the curb. Reporters spilled out, eyes already on the sky. Amid the chaos, a wheelchair came rolling toward the entrance of the building. An elderly man, gaunt and pale, was slumped forward in the chair, his hospital gown barely concealed under a fleece robe. An orderly tried to convince him to go back inside, but he waved the young man off. "That's my dog," the old man croaked, his voice dry and cracked. "That's my buddy. He must have followed me when they brought me in yesterday." Lauren turned. "You know that dog?" The man nodded slowly, eyes never leaving the sky. "He's mine. His name's Buddy. He always stays near me. Won't eat unless I do. Slept on the floor by my bed every night. I didn't even realize he got out. Jesus, I didn't even know he was gone." David approached him. "Sir, are you Mr. Raymond? One of the nurses said—" "That's right, Raymond Green." He clutched the armrests of his wheelchair. His hands were shaking. Ellie stood quietly beside her mother, staring up at the barely visible shape of the dog. Her little fingers tightened around the fabric of her hoodie. "That's not his name," she said softly. Mr. Raymond looked at her, eyebrows furrowed. "What's that?" "His name's not Buddy," Ellie said again, stepping forward. "It's Ranger. You just forgot. Because you've been sick." The noise of the crowd seemed to pull back for a moment, like someone had turned the volume down. Lauren's heart thudded in her chest. Mr. Raymond blinked. How do you know that?" Ellie tilted her head. "He told me." Mr. Raymond's mouth opened, but no words came out. His eyes turned glassy. "My wife," he whispered. "She was the one who named him Ranger. Years ago, after her father's call sign in the army. When she passed, I started calling him Buddy. It helped me forget. Made it hurt a little less." Lauren felt goosebumps rise on her arms. She looked at David, whose face had gone pale. "You've never met this man," she whispered to Ellie. Ellie shook her head. "But you knew." "I didn't know," Ellie said, watching the distant figure of the dog. "Ranger did. He showed me. Not with words, just with feelings. Like pictures in my heart." Nearby, Officer Romero stepped in, having overheard. "Mom, is this your daughter?" His tone wasn't accusatory, more curious than anything. Lauren nodded. "Yes, she's the one who spotted the dog from our apartment window." Romero looked at Ellie, studying her like she was some kind of ancient map. "We had units sweep the building this morning when the maintenance rig lost contact. Nothing showed up on the cameras. We thought it was a glitch in the system. No one reported anything unusual, until she did." "She's always been sensitive," David offered. "But this, it's something else." Romero tapped his radio. "Dispatch, we have confirmed visual on the canine, 30th floor, broken window washing platform. Possibly a full name match. Ranger out of Horizon Tower." "Copy." "Copy," the voice crackled back. "Update incoming." Captain Dawson approached, pulling a tactical map from the back seat of the command truck. We've confirmed the maintenance rig is missing one support cable. The second's fraying. We're dealing with an unstable platform hanging at an angle, one living subject on board, an approximately 80-pound German shepherd. David cut in. Any way to get someone up there? Dawson's jaw clenched. Not without putting human lives at risk. We're too close to losing the entire rig. Air support's grounded. High winds between the buildings, wind tunnel effect. Then what do we do? Lauren asked. We watch, we wait, we pray. That's not good enough, Ellie said suddenly. Her voice was louder than anyone expected from someone her size. Everyone turned. He's not going to last much longer. She continued. His paw hurts. He can't hold on forever. He's scared. How would you know that? The news reporter asked, having just caught the moment on a hot mic. Ellie glanced at her, unflinching. Because I can feel it. And again, silence fell like a curtain. Even the reporter lowered her microphone slightly. He's trying to help Mr. Raymond, Ellie continued. Not just waiting to be saved, he was trying to get someone's attention. Captain Dawson looked at Raymond. Sir, do you know why he might be trying to help you? Raymond looked dazed, then slowly brought a trembling hand to his chest pocket. My meds, he muttered. Heart medication. I was 2 out of it yesterday when they brought me in. I left them at home. He looked up at the captain. If I'd missed another dose. Lauren's breath caught. He was trying to save you. Another voice called out from the command truck. Ma'am, news choppers saying the platform just dipped another 3 degrees. The dog's hanging by just 1 paw now. Captain Dawson grabbed her binoculars and looked up. God help him. Ellie took a step forward toward the building, and this time Lauren noticed the change in her. She wasn't just a child anymore, not in that moment. She was a messenger, a bridge between something ancient and wordless and the modern chaos of humans scrambling to fix what instinct already understood. We need to go up there, Ellie said calmly. Lauren knelt in front of her. Ellie, no one's going up there. It's too dangerous. I'm not scared, Ellie replied, almost apologetic. He's showing me the way. The way where? To him, she said. There's a door behind a big plant. On the 30th floor. It's hidden, but it leads to the maintenance walkway. The rig's attached to it. The glass windows don't open all the way, but the hatch inside does. David's brow furrowed. How do you know that? I just do. Franklin, the building manager, had been silent until now. His face had gone white. There is a door, he said quietly. Behind a ficus tree at the end of the western corridor. Maintenance access. It's not on any public blueprints, but we keep the emergency key under the planter. Romero turned to him. You've got to be kidding me. I never told anyone. Franklin stammered. It's supposed to stay locked. Only janitorial and emergency staff know. Captain Dawson straightened. Get eyes on that door. Now. Lauren pulled Ellie close. You are not going in there. I don't have to, Ellie whispered. But someone does. Soon. He's almost gone. Overhead, the dog let out a low, mournful bark. Even that sound seemed to crack apart on the wind. People in the crowd instinctively reached for each other. A few turned away, unable to watch. But Ellie didn't flinch. He believes someone will help him, she said, her voice steady. He just doesn't know who yet. And then, as if sensing it too, Ranger tilted his head, looking straight down through 30 stories of wind, noise, and confusion, and locked eyes with the little girl on the ground. Waiting, trusting, holding on. For now. The wind between the buildings howled like a freight train. It caught in Ranger's fur, flattening his ears as he clung desperately to the edge of the dangling platform. Below, The crowd flinched in unison as the rig gave a sudden lurch. The remaining support cable stretched tighter now, groaning under the strain like it might snap at any second. Captain Maya Dawson stood beside the command truck, a folded tactical map under one arm, her other hand gripping a portable radio. The structural team just radioed in. No good news. Platform's already tilted past 45 degrees. One more shift. It could swing into the glass or tear free completely. Behind her, a small army of emergency responders moved with precision. Firefighters unspooled hoses as a precaution, EMTs stood by with stretchers and trauma kits, and officers worked to push back the growing crowd. A set of air mattresses was being inflated, though everyone knew it was a symbolic gesture at best. 30 stories was too high. If Ranger fell, nothing would save him. A news chopper hovered nearby, its blades thumping the air in wide, slow beats. The pilot radioed in from the sky. "Negative visual solution?" The voice crackled through Dawson's radio. "Wind tunnel effect is too strong between towers. We can't get closer than 500 feet without losing control," she cursed under her breath. "Copy. Hold position. Stay safe." Lauren stood near the barricade, one arm wrapped protectively around Ellie, whose eyes never left the shape above. "It's like he's holding on just for her," David said quietly beside them. "He is," Ellie whispered, almost like she was answering Ranger, not her father. Across from them, Franklin, the building manager, was pacing anxiously. His crisp white shirt had sweat stains under the arms, and his forehead glistened as he dabbed at it with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Captain Dawson," he called, his voice tight. "I'm sorry, but at some point we have to make a decision. That platform is a risk to the building. It could shatter windows, damage structural beams. People could be injured. We can't let this go on indefinitely." Captain Dawson turned to him slowly, her face unreadable. "You're saying we should, what, let the dog fall?" Franklin flinched at her tone. No, I'm just saying we may have to let nature take its course, clear the area, minimize damage, think of liability. This isn't a person." A silence followed, tense, heavy, until Ellie said, "That's not true." Franklin blinked. "Excuse me?" Ellie stepped forward, small but unwavering. "He's not just a dog. He's trying to help someone. He was trying to get people's attention, because Mr. Raymond was in trouble, and because there's more we haven't seen yet." Captain Dawson studied her, unsure whether to interrupt. "He's showing me things," Ellie continued. "Not like a movie, not words, just flashes, feelings, a hallway, a door, something hidden." Franklin let out a nervous laugh. "This is ridiculous. We are wasting time listening to a 5-year-old. David stepped in fast. "Careful. That 5-year-old saw the dog from over 500 feet away, before any of us did." Lauren's voice cut through the building tension. "And she knew his real name. Ranger, not Buddy. Not something you can Google." Franklin adjusted his collar, face reddening. "Fine. Let's pretend she's right. Even if there is a secret door, we can't fit a rescue team through one of those maintenance hatches. They're designed for gear, not people, and they're locked for a reason." "She doesn't want to go in," Lauren said. "She wants to tell us how." Ellie nodded. "He showed me where the key is. Under the planter." Captain Dawson didn't blink. "Franklin, that true?" He hesitated. "Yes, but it's not public knowledge. There's a maintenance corridor behind the West Hall. There's a ficus in front of the panel. Inside that panel is the access hatch to the cleaning rig rails. The keycard for the lock is stuck to the underside of the planter base. It's emergency protocol." Romero turned from his radio. "We can get someone to the 30th floor. Use the hallway and the hatch." Franklin shook his head again. "That hatch is 2 feet by 2 feet. An adult can't fit through, not with a harness or gear. And it only leads to a service ledge. The platform's several feet beyond that." And the platform's still slipping. Dawson added, "Another shift and it's gone." Overhead, a deep metallic snap rang out like a gunshot. A fragment of twisted steel spiraled downward, landing with a sickening clang on the pavement. Several people screamed. A firefighter dove to shield the reporter standing too close to the perimeter. The second cable's beginning to unravel. Romero muttered, watching through binoculars. Ranger now dangled by his forearms alone, claws scrabbling at the slick metal. His body swung slightly with the wind. His mouth was open, panting hard, tongue lolling in the heat. He looked down, right at Ellie, and she stepped forward again. He says there's still time, but not much, and he's hurting. His paw's cut. Captain Dawson crouched to Ellie's eye level, her commanding tone softening. "You're saying he showed you something? A way up?" "Yes," Ellie replied. "But it has to be someone small enough to crawl out, or someone who can reach without leaning too far." A long silence passed. "No," Lauren said firmly. "Absolutely not." "I wasn't saying her," Dawson replied. "But if what she says is true, we need eyes in that hallway. We need someone who can unlock that hatch and confirm access." Romero was already jogging towards the lobby. "I'll coordinate with the security staff. We'll get someone up there." Franklin trailed behind him, still muttering under his breath. "This is insane. We're risking everything for a dog." Ellie turned toward him, and when she spoke, her voice was flat and steady. "He would have risked everything for you." Franklin froze, and said nothing else. As the command crew scrambled to organize a team for the 30th floor, the chopper above signaled another shift in the wind. The rig tilted again. Ranger's back paws dangled in open air, and he let out a sharp bark, high-pitched and terrified. The sound echoed off the glass and concrete, cutting through the noise. Ellie turned to Captain Dawson. "He doesn't know how much longer he can hold on." Dawson picked up her radio and barked into it. "Romero, status?" "We're in the elevator now. West corridor, 30 seconds." Dawson's jaw clenched. "Move, we're out of time." At that moment, Ellie reached out and touched her mother's hand. "Mom," she said, "he's showing me something else now." "What is it, baby?" "He thinks I'm supposed to go." Lauren's heart stopped, but Ellie's voice was calm. Not brave for show, just certain. "I don't know how, but he does." She paused. "And I think maybe I already did." Above them, Ranger hung by inches, waiting for someone who could hear what no one else could, and trusting, once again, in the one soul who had always heard, him. The security guards never saw her slip past. Ellie ducked behind a marble pillar in the lobby as two guards rushed by, barking into radios. The chaos of the rescue scene below had bled into the building now. Officers, reporters, and Horizon Plaza staff flooded the lower floors, leaving security thin upstairs. Heart pounding but eyes steady, Ellie moved fast. The emergency elevator required a badge swipe, but the maintenance stairs didn't. She tugged open the heavy steel door and began the long climb to the 30th floor, a small hand trailing along the rail, her sneakers echoing softly on the concrete steps. Each level came with a growing sense of urgency, not panic, but pressure. Ranger was still there, still waiting. She could feel it in her chest, like a drumbeat synced to his. On the 30th floor, Ellie paused just beyond the stairwell door. It was quieter up here, eerily so. The hallway was empty, the polished tile floor gleaming beneath the sterile glow of fluorescent lights. Office doors lined both sides, locked and labeled with company names she didn't recognize. She walked carefully, her fingers brushing the wall, searching for what Ranger had shown her in the flashes. A big green plant, a thick grey wall, the hollow clunk of her hand hitting metal beneath. There. A ficus stood near the far corner, large and overgrown, in a rectangular concrete planter that didn't quite match the rest of the decor. She crouched beside it, her fingers probing underneath, feeling for the ridges and grooves Ranger had described not in words, but in weight and warmth. Nothing. Then, plastic. Tape. She peeled it back to reveal a narrow keycard, black with a silver chip, exactly where he said it would be. Ellie slid it through the thin reader on the nearby wall panel. A green light blinked. The panel clicked open to reveal a darkened crawl space, just wide enough for someone her size. Back in the stairwell, the door slammed open. "Ellie!" Lauren's voice cracked with panic. "Ellie, where are you?" Captain Dawson's voice echoed behind her. "She's on this floor. We've got cameras offline, but motion sensors show activity by the west corridor." David's footsteps pounded closer. "Ellie, sweetheart!" But Ellie was already crawling inside. She didn't look back. The space was tight, warm, and full of metal sounds, pipes humming, wind thumping softly against the walls. She moved forward on her elbows, following the memory of what Ranger had felt when he showed her the path. At one point, the narrow shaft opened into a metal catwalk, only a foot wide, with rails on either side, and a door at the end that led outside. She pushed it open. Wind hit her like a slap. 30 stories high, the ledge was narrow, exposed. But Ranger was there, only feet away now, dangling from the listing cleaning platform, one paw barely hooked over the railing. His body swung slightly, his muscles trembling from strain. "Ranger," she whispered. His ears lifted, their eyes locked. He whined, but it wasn't fear. It was recognition. Relief. Ellie knelt by the edge, pressing herself flat, inching forward. She didn't shout. She didn't panic. She simply spoke in a soft, clear voice, the way one talks to a scared animal in the middle of thunder. "I'm here. I see you." Behind her, inside the building, chaos exploded. Captain Dawson's voice bellowed through the earpiece of a rescue worker on site. "We've got visual. She's on the ledge. Get a team up there now." Lauren screamed from the corridor. "Ellie, oh my God, she's out there!" David grabbed the radio from a firefighter. "Don't spook her. Don't shout." Romero was already halfway back down the stairs, barking orders into his comms. "We need a soft rig team now. Rooftop access, light gear, get me a child-safe harness." But none of that mattered to Ellie. Not right now, because all she could hear was the wind, the trembling creak of the failing rig, and Ranger's breaths, short, desperate, but still there. She inched forward again, flat on her stomach. "I'm not gonna let go," she whispered. Ranger whimpered. Then, in a moment that would later leave rescue workers speechless, Ellie did something no one expected. She reached out her small hand. And Ranger, sensing something deeper than logic, shifted his weight. His left paw slipped, his body dropped. The crowd below screamed. But at the last possible second, Ellie caught the harness strap around his shoulder. One hand, one heartbeat, and he stopped falling. Ellie gritted her teeth, both arms now clutching the edge of the rig, holding the harness with everything she had. "Hold on," she muttered, voice shaking. "Just a little longer." From behind her, the hatch burst open. Romero's voice. "We've got her! Go, go, go!" Two rescue workers lunged forward, crawling out onto the ledge, moving like cats on a narrow beam. One secured Ellie's back with a tether. Another wrapped an arm under Ranger's chest and lifted him, gently but fast. The moment Ranger was safe, Ellie collapsed onto the ledge, breathing hard. But she was smiling. When they pulled her back inside, Ranger still tucked against her side, the command post erupted in motion. EMTs, firefighters, media crews. But Ellie didn't notice any of them. She looked at Ranger and whispered, "You showed me the way." Ranger didn't bark. He didn't whimper. He just laid his head gently against her chest. like he'd known all along she'd come. The ledge outside the 30th floor crawl space was barely wide enough for Ellie's sneakers. Her heart banged against her ribs, not from fear, but from urgency. Wind screamed past her ears like a jet engine. Below her, the city blurred, lost in depth and noise. Behind her, adults shouted, radios crackled, and rescue ropes unspooled too slowly. She didn't wait. Ellie looped the rigging strap around her waist twice and yanked it tight. It wasn't rated for her weight. It wasn't meant for a child, but it was all she had. She glanced once at the sky, breathed through her nose the way her grandpa had taught her. Breathed through fear, not into it, and dropped to her knees. Crawling on all fours, she slid toward the narrow maintenance lip that ran alongside the shattered window pane. Shards of glass glittered beside her knees. Each gust of wind felt like it might lift her away from the building and toss her into the air like confetti. But she didn't stop. Ranger dangled 20 feet away, suspended only by the frayed remains of one final cable. The entire platform had shifted, one side now tilting dangerously downward. His body swung gently, his hind legs limp with fatigue, his front paws locked over the rail. He wasn't barking, he wasn't whining, he was just waiting, like he'd already made his peace. "No," Ellie whispered. Then louder, "No!" The platform groaned under Ranger's weight. A high metallic scream tore across the plaza. One of the bolts popped out of its mount and clattered down into the wind. The remaining cable snapped into a steeper angle, pulling taut like a drawn bowstring. Ellie was now perched on the edge, nothing but air beneath her. She wrapped the remaining slack of the harness around her arm and leaned forward, searching his eyes. "Ranger!" she called, voice barely audible in the wind. His head turned, slowly, but his eyes were still bright. The platform shifted again. The last cable frayed like a nerve under strain. Below, people screamed. Captain Dawson shouted into his radio, "Rig failure imminent! Get that child back inside, now!" Lauren sobbed, collapsed in David's arms. "She's going to fall! Oh God, please!" Inside the building, a firefighter was already clipping into a belay line, but it was too late. The final cable snapped. It wasn't a clean break. It ripped, curled, and snapped back with a deadly crack, flinging the cleaning rig downward into open air. And Ranger with it. Ellie stood. No thought, no plan, just raw instinct, and reached out with her arms wide, tears flying off her cheeks in the wind. "Jump, Ranger!" she screamed, voice sharp as glass. "You're not alone." What happened next would later be debated, retold, and immortalized in shaky cell phone footage from a man filming across the plaza. Ranger didn't flinch. He twisted midair, claws raking through nothing, eyes locked on Ellie. And he leaped. It wasn't a trained leap. It wasn't graceful or clean. It was desperate, wild, perfect. Ellie lunged forward, straining every muscle in her small frame. Her hands caught the front of Ranger's harness, but the momentum was too much. They slipped. Both of them lurched toward the edge. Then the strap around her waist went taut, yanking her back just enough to slam her against the wall. Ranger's front legs hit the ledge. His hind legs dangled into nothing. Ellie didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just gritted her teeth and pulled. Every inch of her body screamed in protest. Her arms shook, her fingers white against the straps. Ranger clawed upward, inch by inch, matching her effort. The wind pushed, but she pushed back. He made it. With one last animalistic kick, he scrambled onto the ledge beside her and collapsed. They didn't move. For a moment, the city held its breath. Then the building exploded in noise, cheers from the plaza below, frantic orders from the radios, boots pounding toward the window from inside. But Ellie barely heard any of it. She was lying on her side, curled around the dog's neck, whispering something over and over through trembling lips. You're not alone. You're not alone." Ranger lifted his head, just enough to nudge her cheek with his nose. She smiled, eyes wet, heart full. Then darkness took her, and she slumped against him. Spent, safe. They would find them like that minutes later. Girl and dog, motionless but breathing, bound not just by rescue ropes or a shared moment of adrenaline, but by something far deeper. Faith. For a breathless instant, time folded in on itself. Ranger's front paws scraped against the slick cement lip of the window ledge. His claws caught, but couldn't grip. Ellie lunged and threw her arms around his thick neck, anchoring him by pure instinct. But the force of his weight, the sheer pull of gravity, yanked her forward violently. Her knees skidded. Her feet lost contact with the floor inside. They were going over. The only thing between Ellie and a 300-foot fall was a single safety strap knotted around her waist and clipped to a rusted maintenance bolt drilled into the concrete frame. The cord snapped taut with a vicious jerk, halting both their momentum mid-plunge. Ellie's back slammed into the edge of the window frame, sending a jolt through her spine. Her arms screamed in protest, but she didn't let go. Ranger was half off the ledge now, legs dangling, breathing hard. One wrong shift, one moment of doubt, and both of them would fall. And still she held on. Inside, the building was chaos. Firefighters scrambled through the stairwells. One had a battering ram. Another was already swinging an axe at the steel utility door Ellie had locked behind her. From the floor above, Captain Dawson's voice roared into the comms. "Window breach in 10 seconds. Secure the girl and the dog. I repeat, move!" Down below, the entire plaza was a churning sea of people. Cell phones lifted, voices screaming, some praying. News cameras zoomed in, broadcasting the impossible moment live across the city. A child on a ledge, a dog in her arms, nothing beneath them but wind. Inside Ellie's lungs, oxygen became currency. Her arms trembled, strength fading, fingertips numb. Hold on, baby." Her mother's voice echoed through a rescue megaphone from the street. Ellie couldn't hear the words, but she heard the love in them, heard the desperation. "I've got you," she whispered to Ranger. Her voice cracked. "But I can't." Then the bolt moaned, the one holding the harness line. It shifted. A sound like cracking ice echoed up through the wall. "No," a firefighter shouted. "We're losing the anchor." "Move," Dawson ordered. "Now." On the other side of the door, metal gave way. The axe punched through, splintering the rusted lock. With a crash, the utility door flung open, and the crew surged in. Ellie's body began to tilt outward. Her grip slipped an inch. And that's when two gloved hands grabbed the rope. "Got her!" someone bellowed. "She's slipping! Go, go, go!" 3 firefighters rushed to the edge, anchoring themselves, one wrapping the rope around his forearm, another grabbing Ellie's shirt collar. Slowly, carefully, they reeled her back in like a fish pulled from the jaws of an ocean storm. Ranger didn't move until she was safe. Only when Ellie was pulled across the window frame did the dog make his final effort. He twisted, flung a paw up, then another, and someone seized the harness at his back. "Pull!" Dawson yelled. 6 hands lifted, 2 hearts thudded. One world stopped spinning, and then suddenly they were in. Ellie collapsed onto the cold tile floor, sobbing into Ranger's fur. He buried his nose into her chest, still trembling, his whole body pressed against hers like armor. The rescue team froze. No one spoke. They'd seen miracles on this job, but nothing like this. Outside, cheers erupted. The plaza erupted in applause, in tears, in disbelief. A wave of relief rolled through the crowd like thunder. A news chopper panned close to the shattered window, capturing a shot that would headline papers across the country for weeks. A soot-smudged girl clinging to a dog in a rescue harness, both alive, both unbroken. News anchors would later say it was the kind of ending no one believed possible. The mayor would call it a moment of divine courage. But inside that utility room, away from cameras and applause, it was quieter. "I thought I lost you," Ellie whispered, her fingers tangled in Ranger's coat. The dog let out a low, breathy sound. Not quite a bark, not quite a sigh. A sound that said, "I didn't let go." And he hadn't. Not when he fell, not when she called, not when it mattered most. The veterinary clinic on 9th and Alder was unusually quiet that evening. The storm had finally cleared, but a different kind of stillness had settled across the city. A collective breath held between disbelief and wonder. Inside the clinic, fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, while Ranger lay calmly on the padded exam table, his fur damp but clean, eyes following Ellie as she sat on the stool nearby, legs swinging. Dr. Kessler, a seasoned vet who had treated everything from police canines to zoo rescues, adjusted his stethoscope for the 5th time and stepped back. "This doesn't make sense," he murmured, flipping through Ranger's scans. "What doesn't?" asked Officer Raymond, standing near the window, arms folded tightly. Kessler shook his head, more amazed than confused. "Aside from some minor bruising and a bit of muscle tension, this dog should be dead. A fall from that height?" He pointed to the digital X-ray. "No broken bones, no internal bleeding, no spinal damage. It's like—" He trailed off. "Like what?" Ellie asked, leaning forward. "Like something caught him mid-air," Kessler finished quietly, as if someone, or something, cushioned the fall. Raymond's face paled. He looked at Ellie, then back at the dog. "You mean that literally?" "I don't know what I mean," the vet admitted. "But whatever it is, it's beyond medicine, beyond luck." Ranger turned his head, eyes locking with Raymond's. There was no fear there, only calm, stillness, knowing. Outside, reporters swarmed the front of the clinic. News vans clogged the streets, still chasing the story that had captivated a city. Inside, the moment felt frozen in amber. Raymond stepped away from the window, his voice lower now, uncertain. "Ellie, can I speak to you for a moment?" She nodded and followed him into the private consultation room. The old officer pulled something from his coat pocket, an aged, delicate bracelet with a smooth turquoise charm at the center. He held it out to her with both hands, like it was more sacred than expensive. This belonged to my wife, Caroline," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Before she passed, she used to say she could feel what animals were thinking. Hear them even, though not in words. We all thought it was her way of staying close to the dogs we worked with. I never questioned it until now." Ellie studied the bracelet, the faint warmth radiating from the charm. She didn't touch it. "She had a gift, Ellie," Raymond continued. "One nobody believed, not until tonight." Ellie finally reached out and gently wrapped her fingers around the charm. Her eyes glistened. "Ranger told me something," she said. Raymond froze. "Told you?" She nodded slowly. "He said you weren't alone, that Caroline's waiting for you. He said she still walks with you, especially when you're quiet. She misses your humming." Raymond's breath hitched. He hadn't told anyone about the humming. His wife used to say it calmed the dogs, that low, gravelly hum he'd do unconsciously while cleaning his gun or prepping the van. After she died, he'd stopped. It felt pointless. Like part of him had stopped too. Tears welled in his eyes. Not because a child had guessed something, but because in the smallest, strangest way, it felt like his wife had sent this girl. Or maybe the dog. Or both. He took a moment, then gently slid the bracelet onto Ellie's wrist. "She would have wanted you to have this." Ellie didn't say thank you. She just looked up, eyes deep and steady. "It's not me," she said softly. It's them. I just hear what they need to say." From the next room, Ranger gave a single, low bark. Not sharp, not alert, just acknowledging. Raymond laughed quietly. It wasn't joy, exactly. It was something older, warmer, a sense that the world wasn't quite as empty as it had felt before. When they stepped back into the exam room, Dr. Kessler was scratching his head, muttering to himself. "I've seen bullet wounds, shattered hips, crushed lungs," he said to no one in particular. "But this isn't medicine." Ranger hopped down from the table without hesitation, padded over to Ellie, and rested his head against her hip. Raymond knelt beside the dog and whispered, "Thank you for bringing her home." And though no one else heard it, Ellie caught the dog's gentle response, not in words, but in heart. She brought me home, too. The move was fast, too fast for a family that had never planned on packing up their lives. But after the footage of Ranger's rescue went viral, the reporters came in waves. Satellite vans lined the curb outside their apartment. Ellie couldn't take out the trash without being ambushed by cameras or asked to talk to the dog again. So Raymond helped them find a small home on the edge of a quiet town 30 miles away. Trees outnumbered neighbors, and the only noise at night came from wind, crickets, and the occasional distant howl. It wasn't just a change of address. It was a full restart. Ellie liked it. The silence here wasn't heavy like it had been in the city. It breathed. Their new house had a creaky porch, a garden that hadn't seen care in years, and a tiny trail that led into the woods behind. Ranger stayed close, more her shadow than her pet. And her parents, for the first time in weeks, looked like they could breathe. 3 days after the move, the storm came. One of those sudden mountain storms, sharp rain, quick wind, flashes of lightning cutting the sky open like scissors through paper. By nightfall, power had gone out. Ellie lit the emergency lantern in her room and curled up beside Ranger on the floor. She was just dozing off when she sat bolt upright. The voice wasn't loud, but it pressed against her chest, raw, panicked, maternal. "They're out there. I can't find them. I can't smell them. Help!" Ellie blinked, heart racing. She looked at Ranger, whose ears were already up. "You heard it too." Ranger stood. She grabbed her rain jacket and headlamp, scribbled a quick note. "Taking Ranger for a walk. Back soon," and bolted into the backyard. The forest trail behind the house was thick with fog and slick with runoff. Branches dripped, and somewhere nearby, an owl cried. But Ellie didn't stop. She let the pull in her chest guide her, like a compass not made of metal but memory. They reached a gnarled maple where the trail split. Ranger stopped, nose to the wind. Then Ellie heard it. Again. "They need me. They'll die if I don't get back." Not words, but grief in shape. She turned left, off trail, crashing through wet brush until Ranger let out a short bark and veered into a thicket. They found her, a drenched border collie curled beneath a fallen tree, fur caked with mud, eyes wide and desperate. She whined when she saw them, then tried to scramble up, only to collapse. "Hey, hey, easy," Ellie whispered, kneeling. "Where are they?" The collie shifted, snout nudging toward the dark patch of woods behind her. Ranger didn't wait. He ran. Ellie followed. Minutes later, they found the pups. 5 tiny shapes in the hollow of a rotted log, huddled and shivering. One didn't move. Ellie bit her lip, reached in, and felt the weak flutter of a heartbeat. She wrapped them in her jacket, stuffed it close to her chest, then called out, "Is anyone here?" "Hello?" A cough answered. Behind a tree, an older man slumped half-conscious, one hand clutched to his side. Blood and mud stained his flannel. His leg was twisted unnaturally. Ranger stood over him, whining. "I thought I heard voices." The man rasped. "Thought I was dreaming." "You're not," Ellie said. "Help's coming." She didn't panic. She laid the pups next to the mother, tore her hoodie to make a tourniquet, and used her emergency whistle, 3 sharp bursts. It took 15 minutes for the volunteer rescue team to arrive, tipped off by a neighbor who'd seen Ellie bolt into the woods. They carried the man, Jake Simmons, a retired firefighter, out on a stretcher. The vet said he had maybe another hour before hypothermia would have taken him. The pups, warmed and cleaned, all survived. Local news picked up the story, of course. Girl who saved K9 now rescues entire dog family. But this time, Ellie didn't mind the attention. Not as much, because now no one was calling it coincidence. Now they were starting to believe. Years passed, and Ranger found a new kind of service. He was no longer the pup who lunged into burning buildings or braced against the screams of war. Instead, he walked slowly now, his gait stiff but purposeful, down the polished hallways of the VA hospital where Raymond volunteered. Veterans, some silent, some broken, would sit straighter when they saw him. The dog didn't bark. He didn't perform tricks. He just looked them in the eye and stayed. That was enough. PTSD patients who hadn't spoken in weeks whispered his name. A triple amputee laughed for the first time in months when Ranger rested his head gently on his stump. Night terrors eased, shoulders uncurled. It was as if the dog absorbed pain and exhaled something steadier, like peace. Ranger didn't just comfort, he healed. Ellie, now a teenager with sharper eyes and quieter habits, watched all this from a respectful distance. She never said it aloud, but she knew what he was doing. He was giving the last of his strength away. And then, one crisp October morning, he came home. He didn't need help walking up the porch. He didn't whine or collapse. He found Ellie in the backyard, pruning the small garden she'd grown herself, and lay down beside her without a sound. She looked over and knew. No panic, no denial, just the quiet acknowledgement between two souls who had nothing left to explain. She sat beside him, pulled his graying head into her lap, and brushed the dirt from his fur with shaking fingers. "You kept every promise," she whispered into his ear, "and I'll keep mine." His tail thumped once, then silence. He didn't whimper, he didn't flinch. He simply exhaled, one final breath as soft as wind through pine needles, and was gone. The sky darkened that evening, not from clouds, but from a weight that pressed gently over their home. Ellie didn't eat dinner. She didn't speak. She stayed by the empty patch of grass until her mother called her in. But the next morning, the phone at the VA started ringing. A patient in the PTSD unit said he'd dreamt of a dog with amber eyes lying beside his bed, keeping the nightmares away. Another woman said she'd felt something press against her leg just before she finally fell asleep after 4 nights of trembling. Raymond got 3 calls by noon, all different voices, all describing the same dog. No one was surprised, because once, long ago, Ranger had pulled a girl back from the edge. Now maybe he was still doing it, just from somewhere else. Time softened the edges of the headlines, but the image never faded. The 5-year-old girl clutching a falling dog as if her small arms alone could defy gravity. They called it a miracle. Some said luck. Others still whispered about fate. But Ellie never thought of it that way. She simply remembered the weight of Ranger's body, the heat of his breath against her cheek, and the way his heartbeat slowed when she said, "I've got you." Years passed. Ellie grew taller. Her voice steadied. Her gift, once doubted and dismissed, became something others leaned into. She never chased fame. She didn't have to. People came to her, broken veterans, abandoned pets, grieving families, and somehow she always knew what to say, or more often, what to let the animals say for her. The Animal Assisted Therapy Center, co-founded with Dr. Patel, became a quiet sanctuary tucked behind the trees near their suburban home. Not a facility, not a clinic, a refuge, a place where fear didn't echo and silence didn't mean suffering. Ellie wasn't the leader in the traditional sense. She was the bridge, the whisper between cries, the stillness where healing began. And always, on her wrist, the worn silver bracelet. Caroline's, the woman who once spoke to animals not with words, but with understanding. The woman who Raymond said had a gift passed down not by blood, but by need. The bracelet glinted whenever Ellie reached out a hand, sometimes to a dog with scars, other times to a soldier with eyes that had seen too much. In every case, it was the same invitation. Stay. Be seen. One autumn afternoon, with the air holding the scent of turning leaves and dry hay, Ellie sat barefoot in the center of the sanctuary pasture. Around her, a patchwork of creatures moved gently. An elderly pit bull missing one eye, a goat who refused to be separated from its kitten friend, a pair of retired police dogs who still perked up when they heard sirens in the distance. Ellie leaned back, palms pressed to the earth. Her hair was longer now, tied in a loose braid, her expression that of someone far older than her years. Yet her eyes still held the same spark Ranger had seen in her when he first pressed his nose to hers. Trust, raw and open. She glanced upward. The sky was cloudless, just an endless blue with light streaks of cirrus like faded trails. Somewhere, in the whisper of wind, she thought she heard a bark. Not loud, just familiar. Ellie smiled. Then she turned her head slightly toward the camera a volunteer had set up for their weekly video series, meant to raise awareness and funding for the center. It wasn't flashy, no trending audio, just Ellie, surrounded by beings that had known both trauma and tenderness. She looked into the lens, and she asked softly, "What's your story with a loyal pet?" She didn't need to say more, because somewhere out there, someone needed that question. And someone else, maybe a child, maybe a veteran, maybe just someone alone, needed the reminder that stories like Ranger's weren't just miracles from the past. They were waiting to happen again. If this story touched your heart, help us keep it alive. Support animal rescue, trauma recovery, and the quiet heroes, both human and canine, who walk between two worlds. Subscribe to the German Shepherd channel and share your own story. We're listening.